Everybody, this is going to be the recorded TFT for attention. It's a beginning level 1 hour webinar training. Go ahead and share my screen. First thing we're going to do is present the objectives. I will say, since we only have 1 hour, we don't really do a long icebreaker, and we tie the very first kind of, question that we're doing in any of our 1 hours to make sure to the content. 1 hour goes by really fast, so it's really hard to include all of those things and or still allow time for participant comments and questions. So if you haven't done one of the 1 hours, I would just keep that in mind because it's hard. You got to watch the time. So the objectives for this course is to recognize times when caregivers or teachers may need to have children's attention and times when that expectation may not serve a purpose. And so we are not telling them what's right and what's wrong in this session. We really are just trying to get them to think about this question, to evaluate those times that they do demand attention, and does it serve a purpose, or is it just a commonplace thing where they feel like the children's attention should always be on them? And just to kind of evaluate that, reflect on that, and think about how the practices could be improved. Second thing is describing positive and negative methods of gaining children's attention along with consequences of those methods. They will do a little activity with that. And then they're going to be able to list a number of practices that can be used with children in a fun and consistent manner in order to gain their attention when necessary. So we will have a chance to show them some ideas and then gain from them whether they've used any of those ideas, whether they're new to them, and give them a chance to share ideas with each other. And we'll review these at the end as well. So we start off by asking participants, why do we want children's attention? We know that there's many times during the day when it's necessary, and that there's different reasons for that, which we will cover. But again, we want to ask them, do we stop ourselves and ask ourselves the question if requiring their attention serves a purpose, or is it just an ongoing expectation? If it is it appropriate, or maybe it's not so appropriate? And again, we're not here to judge that. We've got a lot of different people attending the trainings. We're not necessarily going to know. We just want them to really think about it if they've never thought about it before. So we start off with this general question of why do we want their attention, and ask people to use the chat box to type in their answers. After we do that, we're going to get right into our first activity, and just thinking about whether we need children's attention in different situations. So we're going to show them some various pictures, and in each picture, they're going to get to kind of evaluate and be asked if it's necessary for the children's attention to be required. And then for each slide that we show that has a different picture on it, we're going to put up a poll question, that asks them the same thing. Should we be requiring the children's attention? The poll answer choices should be yes, no, or either unsure. You can also put it depends. We have a lot of discussions about how it depends on exactly what's happening in the photo. And there's really where we get into some good conversations about, well, yeah, that might be a safety thing in this aspect. So we would want their attention on us. And then someone else might come right behind that and say, well, but they also could be children who've been doing that aspect the whole entire year. And so that's not, it's not a new lesson. It's not something that they necessarily need to be required to pay attention. So the conversation is what gets people thinking about the different answers and lets people realize that it is situational, and we have to be ready and aware of that so that we know whether it's appropriate or not to demand that attention. So this is the first photo. Like I said, with each one, we will do the participant poll that just asks them how many people think it should be required, how many people don't think their attention should be on the teacher, and then if they're unsure. And then we kind of show them the results and then give them a few minutes to discuss the answers, why some said yes, why some said no. And it is important to get the reasoning behind both the yeses and the nos. Here's the second one. And this one obviously can lead into some great discussion about, appropriate group times. And if it's appropriate, you're teaching a specific concept at the moment, you know, it might be okay that we require their attention. If it's been 45 minutes and they're two and they're still sitting there, maybe not so appropriate. But again, it's that situational description that we're going to hear from participants that let them kind of talk through that. And the few times I've done this, I have had people say, wow, I never thought about it that way when they hear each other share. So it sounds like it's been pretty beneficial. Here's the next photo up for discussion. And I will say in some of these, if you get groups that are completely just stuck on the health and safety aspect, you can help them, you know, get past that if you wanted to state preemptively, okay, let's take health and safety out of this. What do you think? Some people can't get past the fact that they're looking at a plastic knife here. So we might have to set the scene. Okay, these are 5.5-year-olds. They've been cutting with this plastic knife for 3 years in their program. Now, what do you think about attention? Some little guys doing some puzzles. What could be some reasons that we would want their attention on a male teacher? What are some reasons why we wouldn't? And again, we're going to do the poll for every one of these slides. This one, of course, the health and safety aspect comes up again. We put this one in here because of the amount of children who are now doing carpool lines and having to walk across parking lots and things to get to the area where they're being picked up now, since families aren't going into the program. So we did add this one for a health and safety reason. There's another one with what looks possibly like some older children playing. Some people jump right to the fact that they look like they're on a hill and it might be unsafe. Again, you might want to supersede those conversations with, let's pretend they're fine on the hill. Do they need to have their attention on the teacher or not? And our final one here. We'll get some highlights of the yeses and the nos. So at the end of those examples, we're going to want to come back and just reiterate that at many times there's no true need to expect children's full attention on the teacher. And it is important that we allow them time to focus on their own selves, their activities, their social interactions with each other. And if they are literally so worried about not paying attention to us, we're not giving them the space to do that. We also want to remind them that we have to remember the age and developmental appropriateness of our expectations. So we shouldn't be expecting very young children to keep their attention on us for hour after hour after hour. If it is our commonplace just expectation that their eyes are on us and paying attention to us at every given second, we may want to ask ourselves why we think we need to do that. Why do we think we need all of that attention as the adults? Just, again, remind them that children learn best when they're active and engaged, not sitting there passively listening and just staring at us and trying to hold our attention. So just asking ourselves again, are we teaching in the best manner if we're constantly asking them to just sit and pay attention to us? So to move on, then we want to reiterate with them, though, of course, we've mentioned there are times when we might actually need children's attention. So different reasons can be discussed. And we're going to give some examples and kind of go through them. So we introduce group time or circle time and just point out some examples of when we could need that or could want that attention from the children. So we might be providing an opportunity to learn to listen to each other, be patient, and politely wait our turn. And again, depending on the age, there may be an appropriate way to do this. There's also inappropriate ways to do this. We may be giving information about the day. Maybe the schedule is changing because of a special class visitor. Maybe we're telling them about the special class visitor. We do want them to hear that information. We may be giving direction or information about activities available or occurring that day. So if you brought some new materials to put in the science center based on your group time yesterday, you want everybody to hear that so that when you get to center time, they can make an informed choice about whether they want to go play with that. And you could be presenting new information about a topic or concept that you guys were already discussing in your group time or circle times. So those could be snippets of reasons why you would want them to pay attention. Again, for this one, we want to make sure to point out that we are talking about appropriate group times or circle times, not circle times that expect children's attention for really long periods of time, no engagement factors, just that expectation of listening to the teacher lecture. That's not what we're talking about here. And then we're going to end by asking participants if there's other reasons why we might expect children's attention during group or circle, and they can chat those or share them verbally, sorry. The next time is center time or free play. And a few examples we're going to give is we might be providing directions on how to use something properly. We might be stopping an inappropriate action or interaction, and then of course we'd want their attention on us. And it might be time to transition to the next scheduled activity. So we're gonna need their attention to listen to either a set of directions or how we need them to clean up, or whatever it is that we need them to hear. So again, we'll ask them at the end of this if there's any other reasons why we might expect children's attention during center time or free play, and they can either put it in the chat box or they can share verbally. And then finally, our last chunk of examples we're going to give is transitions. So we might be providing directions for the transition. And of course, if we can have them all hear that when we say that one time and we don't have to say it 20, it helps. We might be giving information about the next activity we're going to. And sometimes when children get to a new activity, then they disperse and they just get right in there, right? So it's helpful to have their attention before we get there. Again, maybe as part of that direction for the transition, to let them know what's going to happen or what they could do when they get to where they're going. But we have them hear that all at the same time. We would need their attention to do so. And then finally, we might be engaged in transition activity or game where listening to others is needed. So depending on how you're getting from point A to point B, there's some different games and story games and transition songs and finger plays and things like that that might need some of their attention in order for it to be successful. So just like the other two, we will ask for additional ideas from the participants, and they can put them in the chat box or they can share verbally. And then finally, we kind of just open up the conversation to, are there other times that we didn't talk about? There are other situations we might be in when we need the attention of children. So I would assume if they didn't come up before this, health issues might come up. So demonstrating how to teach someone to blow their nose, how to wash their hands properly. And then of course, safety issues, stopping a child from climbing over the fence, using scissors in an unsafe manner, a lot of those things that you need to try to stop, staying with the teacher or the group instead of wandering away on field trips, things like that are just some examples of things that other people might bring up. So now that we've talked about when we might want their attention, we kind of move into ways to get their attention. And we want to let them know that there's positive and negative methods to getting children's attention. And while both of them might work, they have different effects on children. So we're going to discuss some differences in the methods and the consequences of using them, and then kind of ask ourselves, which one should we be using? So we're going to have them use the annotate feature in Zoom for this next activity. So we are going to show the negative methods of getting children's attention and their possible effects or consequences. And we're going to ask them to use their annotate feature to mark or stamp ones that they have seen being used on children, and then the effects that they've seen. And of course, we want to introduce this by, not asking them to say, which ones have you done? Asking them to say, which, have they witnessed these negative methods being used? And then have they witnessed the negative effects? We're not going to call anybody out or ask them to tell on themselves. Once they do that, we can clear the annotations that happen because we want to start over with a blank screen. And we'll move to the positive methods and positive effects. And this time we are going to ask them to use themselves. So we're going to ask them to go back to the annotate feature and use the stamps. They can circle, they can star, they can put a check mark. And so we want to ask them to mark the positive methods that they have used, and then mark the positive effects that they have seen because of their use of those methods. And then after that, it's kind of a good place to stop and ask if anybody has any questions. So then we are going to give them some ideas for future use. So this is our idea pile up. We're going to show a video that has a series of different attention getters for children. We have included some different variations. We have included some for different ages of children. It's just kind of a mashup of different ideas. And we're going to ask them to kind of note their favorites for future use, and afterwards put their favorites in the chat box. The video is about 4 minutes long, I believe.
Everybody have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. Everybody have a seat on the floor. Not on the ceiling, not on the door. Everybody have a seat on the floor. Isn't that better than sit down and be quiet and listen to me? When you want our attention, try singing to us.
So a really cute one that you can use with even 2- and 3-year-olds is to call out macaroni and cheese, and then the children yell, everybody freeze. And when they do that, they love to strike a pose and try to stand like a statue and be real still. Then you really have a good opportunity to have them be quiet and focusing on you. Alligator, alligator.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I barely got time to talk.
Give me a clap. 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 Give me a snap. Give me a snap. Now fold your hands and put them down into your lap.
And husband over the crowd.
Now we're gonna get talk to talk.
Ooh, some of us were quiet after Tuesday and beyond.
Another thing that you can do is get the label off a can of applesauce, glue it to a piece of paper, put it on a stick, and when you want the children to sit crisscross applesauce, you hold this up. This is actually reading. This is visual literacy. They read pictures before they read words. Hocus pocus.
Everybody focus.
You can call out, ready to rock, and the children respond, ready to roll.
Try this. Listen up. What's up? What's up? What's up? See what I mean?
I'm getting my voice, match me. Match me. Match me.
Popsicle.
Okay, quietly and carefully, you need to come back to the carpet. Melt.
If you can hear me, touch your nose. If you can hear me, touch your ear. And because I'm whispering, only the kids that are right in front of me that are ready to learn can hear me. So once the other students kind of notice that we are already doing something on the carpet, they come and join us as well. And you don't even have to raise your voice. You just actually lower it into more of a whisper. If you can hear me, blink your eyes 3 times. If you can hear me, touch your head. If you can hear me, wiggle your nose. If you can hear me, wiggle your ears. Can you wiggle your ears? Without touching them? So we'll kind of do that on the carpet. Just lower your tone of voice. It doesn't always have to be kind of up and raised to talk over the kids. A lot of times it works better if you lower your voice.
Okay, so again, we'll ask them to put their favorites that they saw in the chat box. And one thing I do want to note, I always tend to make a disclaimer on the crisscross applesauce that we want to use the mediator, the little sign, as a symbol and a hint for what they're supposed to do, but we should not be forcing children to actually sit crisscross applesauce. It might not be comfortable for them physically, and as long as they are where we need them to be, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but it still would be a signal that it's time to sit down. So I would just kind of point that out. So we share kind of what some people say that are their favorites. Some of people will chat in that they've used a couple of them before. They really like some of the new ones, and they'll point out which ones those are. So after they do that, we ask them one last time to use the chat feature to share any other tips or tricks or attention getters that they use that may not have been in our example. And you can open this up verbally also, depending on how much time that you have. So we've been able to actually gain a lot more ideas from people just sharing other ones that they use that work well for them. So after that, Sharon, we just review our objectives. I've been asking people to use the annotate feature as we go through this again, just to kind of stamp a check mark if they feel like we covered this objective, or if they feel like they've gained any new information about this objective, because it's kind of trainer feedback as a facilitator to gain, rather than just saying this. We're going to review our objectives and going through them really fast. We're actually asking them a question. Do you feel like we went through this objective? So we propose all three of these, give them some time to put check marks on there. You can start to see patterns. If nobody's checking off the second one and you've done this 5 times, maybe we need to look at that type of thing. And then kind of finally their ticket out the door, ask them to always chat one new attention getter that they're going to use when they go back. Again, of course, probably along with their name again for attendance purposes, but then that's kind of their last thing that they need to do. Take it out the door, tell us which one thing you're going to use for transfer of learning plans, and then that's it. Thank you.